Since it is Killer Women's Week over in Killer Chicks, yes, we updated the title of the group for the week. We are going to tackle one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations, Misery. I went out and bought this new 4K restoration, although it's a Blu-ray, so it's not really true 4K, which is kind of bullshit. So technically, it's more of a 1080p, but I wonder if that means they'll ever release the actual 4K restoration. Regardless, this is an excellent transfer and a huge upgrade from the terrible, terrible DVD that I have. Now, one thing that always really, kind of surprises me, I guess, is that this was written and directed by the guys behind The Princess Bride. I mean, that is one of those movies that is, always thought of as a family film and, this romance. And I guess technically this is kind of a romantic film. But Annie Wilkes is one of the most iconic killer women in film. Although technically in the film, I think she only kills one person. So it's not like she's slashing people right and left or anything. But she is a psychopath. And I've seen interviews with her and she says that Dolores Claiborne is the best performance that she's ever given. I disagree. I think everyone pretty much would agree across the board that this is her best performance. And although I do love the shit out of this movie, anytime I see James Caan will always be Tommy Corman from Honeymoon in Vegas. I adore that movie. I talk about it here all the time. So anytime I see him, it should be this movie, but it isn't. It is Honeymoon in Vegas. Anybody like that movie? It's Nicolas Cage's, probably my ultimate favorite Nicolas Cage movie. And that's saying something because I just love that fucking crazy lunatic. I guess this video is mostly going to be comprised of me just asking a whole bunch of questions because I was kind of theorizing throughout the entire film. Was this how it's supposed to have played out? Or did she do that? Or did she know? Or whatever. So getting into the first one of those, when Paul is driving back after he's finished his novel, he crashes, and it's pretty coincidental that Annie just happens to be there to pick him up. And, I guess you could be like, okay, did she put something in the road? Was she following him? I mean, you have to surmise that she was at least stalking and following him because the odds of her just happening upon her favorite writer. Also, I guess that also, really kind of brings me to, did she move there because, he wrote there? I think that it's too coincidental, but then again, it could have just been the fact that she lived around him and then became obsessed with him. I think that works too, but it's an interesting question to pose for sure. And I love our introduction to her because I think that if you were watching this movie and were completely unaware, because that's something that I always think about when I watch films is there's a marketing campaign and there's posters and there's, word of mouth and there's all these kinds of spoilers, stuff we don't even think of as spoilers because I personally love going into films blind, which I talk about all the time on here. But with a movie like this, I think that every writer, every, filmmaker, everybody always, makes a film with no intention of anyone knowing what is going to happen. If a movie is marketed a certain way, your expectations are that way. And so I like that this film plays off of the fact that she's super sweet and innocent and almost simple, maybe religious. Something about her is just too wholesome. And you can tell there's something a little more, insidious under it all. But I like that it does kind of play with that, okay, she saved him. And as I said, if you just threw this on randomly for somebody and they were watching it and they didn't know what this movie was about at all, it wouldn't be up until the point where she starts freaking out over the cussing in the book that you would start to be like, oh shit, this chick's fucking crazy. And I don't know. I don't think we go into enough films blind, because I think that would be a little shocking to us. And because we see the marketing and all that stuff, then you go into these kinds of movies and you're expecting those things. So when they come, it's just like, I know that's coming. So it doesn't faze us in the slightest. So it'd be really interesting to watch this movie with somebody who knew literally nothing about it at all and watch them be like, oh, that bitch crazy. So anyway, moving on. I had to make a joke about this. If you're over in Killer Flicks, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But a friend of mine over there, Stephen Arthur, he has this thing where he just won't cuss. And in this movie, she won't cuss to the point where she literally doesn't even have any idea how to cuss. Like, she uses words like bitchly and stuff. And it's really funny. And I had to, the entire time, think that I was watching Stephen in his real life. It was cracking me the fuck up the entire time. She was freaking out. And I think another scene that's kind of important to show us how either crazy she is and or how, like, okay she is with what she's doing, almost to the point where she doesn't even think she's doing anything wrong, is when the cop is investigating the scene where her car has crashed, or Paul Sheldon's car has crashed, and she doesn't even look at the cops. She doesn't even acknowledge them. She's not nervous in that scene, nothing. She just drives past them like nothing. And I guess that could leave a lot of different kinds of interpretations open. Maybe she's just so in her own world she doesn't even notice them. Or she notices them and it just doesn't matter to her at all because she thinks she's gotten away with the perfect crime. Or because she's completely fucking crazy and thinks that what she's doing is right. And, she later in the film talks about how she talked to God and God said that she was there to put him on the right path. So, there's so many questions that this movie leaves open for me. And I think a lot of the great movies do that, where you can watch them and you can watch them in so many different ways and interpret things in so many different ways. But they're not so ambiguous that you're left being like, okay, I don't know what the fuck is going on in this movie. Like, this movie's pretty cut and dry in a lot of ways, but in a lot of other ways, there are just things that are fun to pick apart and be like, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? The scene where she comes in with Misery the pig and like snorts at him, that, I don't know why that scene will always make me laugh. Also, something I forgot to mention here, this is the first film and the only film that I've ever watched back to back. I pressed play on this thing, I watched the whole thing, and as soon as it was over, I stopped it, I rewound it. Yes, it was on VHS. And I pressed play and I watched the whole fucking thing over again, all in one sitting. I was just so blown away and enamored by this film. It really got to me. And there's so many things about it, and I think I'll get into a couple of those here as we go on, but it really just is pretty much a flawless, perfect film to me. I genuinely don't think I could come up with a single thing to complain about. I'm sure if I was a dick and I really sat here and be like, and just peek out like these little stupid things, I'm just not someone like that. But yeah. So another thing that Paul does super well in this movie, and I don't think we see enough of in film, and of course not every film should do this because then you would be on the flip side of that and be like, well, why don't they do this on the other side? But something we just don't see enough of is people playing to the crazy person in a smart way. Like, so many people they're so prideful and they're so like angry and they just have to stand up for themselves. And there's so many times in this movie where Paul could just lose his shit. He could just freak out on her, but he knows she is a ticking time bomb and that he is incapacitated and that he is at this chick's mercy. And he just knows, like, he's so smart and calculated and patient. And I think that's what I really love about his character in this film. He's not bitching throughout the movie. He's not crying. He's not whining. He's sitting there and he's trying his best to deal with it and be strong and play it smart and realize like this chick, you know, needs to be talked to in a certain way. If she sees all these trigger points throughout the movie, like the smallest thing can set this chick off. You know, like, oh, this isn't the right paper. And he's just stating something. He's not being contradicting. He's not being a dick about it at all. And he sees like anything will just set this chick over the top. And I love how he plays it in this film so many times. Where if he came at her, she would just kill him on the spot. And he knows that. And he's smart enough to not do that. So I love Paul in this film. And I don't know how I would act because none of us ever do. But I would hope that I would be as smart as him. And this is a perfect example, for instance. Being a writer myself and somebody who takes pride in a lot of the work that he's done, burning your book after you've spent months in a cabin away from your family, you've poured every fucking inch of your soul into this thing, you think it's your best work. It's not another misery novel. It's not something he doesn't care about. Like, this is a guy who has written books that he does not like and has felt a slave to for years and years and years. And now, here he is, and he has taken this new novel and he's made it his passion project, something that his editor doesn't want him to make, something the people don't want him to make, and he's proud of this novel, and he has to burn it because she threatens to burn him. And I do love how, you know, it's not just outright said by her, like, I'll fucking kill you if you don't do this. No, it's just very, like, you know, sly. She's just kind of like throwing a little bit of lighter fluid on him, and it's just like he knows in that moment that he has no fucking choice. And even though you think like, well, he's got no choice, just burn the book, it's not just that easy. I mean, he does it because he's smart and he's not going to be a prideful idiot who gets killed for, you know, a fucking book, because nothing is really worth your life. But man, being put in a position where you have to burn your fucking, you know, passion project like that, oh my God, it gives me anxiety every time I watch it. And just watching him like do it and the look on his face. There's such great subtlety to his performance too, because he doesn't talk a ton in this film, but there's so much that he says in his face throughout so many different scenes. The you know, the abuse, the trauma, all that stuff is really conveyed well. So I think James Caan gives an incredible performance here that's kind of downplayed a little bit, just because I think this is like one of those scenarios, almost like a Silence of the Lambs, where Anthony Hopkins is the one that gets all the credit, but, you know, Buffalo Bill is just as good, if not better, in my opinion. And he just, and when you talk about that movie, I mean, everybody talks about the fucking dancing scene with the, you know, goodbye horses and all that stuff, and it gets overshadowed by Anthony Hopkins' amazing performance as Hannibal Lecter, and I feel like that kind of what happens here as well. His performance doesn't get as much credit as it should because Kathy Bates is so overwhelmingly insane and crazy and awesome in this film. And I definitely, I mean, I think everyone can figure this out on their own, but just, this is, to me, Stephen King just kind of being a little meta here and saying that sometimes writers get locked into series and books they don't want to do for publishing houses or for fans' necessity or whatever, and you feel like you're trapped and that this has become your life. I mean, and I totally could understand that. I don't have the luxury of finding out what that's like, because that's something I would love to do, but I definitely could understand writing something and then being like, well, you know, I made that. And especially if the first Misery book was more of a, like a, you know, writing this to sell it kind of novel. Because I've thought about doing that many, many times, because there's so many like stupid kinds of movies and stuff that I see in books that I'm like, you know, maybe I should just write a really easy, stupid one that seems to sell like crazy every fucking time someone writes one. And kind of have that as my, like, all right, I wrote that piece of shit, but that got me the money and the name so that I can do something I actually enjoy. So it makes me wonder if he wrote Misery as one of those like, all right, I'm going to write this to get my name out there. It's kind of like a Blaze or a Harlequin novel or something. And he puts it out there, and then it becomes super popular, and then everyone's pushing him, and he's like, oh, I don't want to do another one. And then he does another one because, you know, it starts, you need the money, and it's hard to turn it down, and you have a family and whatever. And then he just like continues to keep writing and writing, and there's just more and more. And we find out in this movie, there's 8 of those damn books at this point, and he is just miserable. So, yeah, I have to think about that when I watch this too. And the fact that she then, like, he's killed Misery. And that, of course, then asks my next big question here. Did Annie ever have any intention on letting Paul go? Or did the fact that Misery's child came out as he was there, I mean, it's coincidental, but come on, it's fiction, it doesn't matter. She picks up the copy. If he didn't kill her in that book, would she have freaked? Would she have let him go? Would she? Because it's not until that point, like, yes, she has the freak out of the cuss words and all that, but that's not like beyond. The point where she goes beyond like recovery to the point where he would want to press charges and whatnot is once she finds out Misery's dead. And then she reveals the big bomb, like, I never called your agent. I never called your fucking family. No one knows you're here. You're screwed. Like, once that happened, it was over. So I always have to wonder if that's the tipping point, or if she never had any intention at all of ever letting him leave. But in going back to what I was talking about before, once she does find out Misery's dead, then she forces him, and as I said, that's the symbolism of what I was talking about with Stephen King being forced to write certain things. I don't know how true that is of him. It might be. He wrote this, so I don't know. But, you know, does she use that? Like, I don't know. There's so many questions I have for that. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to ramble too much about that, but I have to wonder. And when she's forcing him to write Misery's Return, she does something that I am kind of, you know, you've seen here on the channel, I am a stickler for continuity. And she like comes in, she's like, nope, this is all wrong. And it's like one of my favorite parts in the movie when she's just like, he didn't get out of the cock-a-doodie car. Like, that's how I am when I watch movies. Like, there's so many movies where I watch sequels and whatnot. I'm like, oh, no. Like a Halloween H2O or, you know, a bunch of Halloweens, for instance. I don't know, it fucks with my brain. Like, Halloween 3 gets a pass because it just doesn't have anything to do with it, and I'm okay with that. And same thing with, like, Warlock movies, like the third one, or, like, you know, Witch Boards, or, like, when the sequels are completely disconnected, I don't care. But if you're going to continue on that same storyline and you're not going to pay attention to other things already established, no, not okay. I love that we get to see a shrine to him in this. I mean, just, my God, this chick's out of control. And another thing, like, here's another moment where we just could have seen him lose it, but he doesn't. He takes all that, you know, painkillers they give her, he puts it in the thing, pours it in her wine, and she knocks it over. And this guy went through pain because he wasn't able to take those. So he had to sit there in writhing pain for weeks, probably, so that he could get enough of that shit to kill her or knock her out or whatever it would have done. I don't know, she's pretty damn heavy, so it'd take a lot. But I would guess it would kill her as much as he put in there. But he saves all this shit up, he goes through all this pain to do it, and then she knocks it over. And of course that also asks the question, did she know? Did she have any indication? Like, why is he doing this? Was she smart? Did she think like, all right, maybe he did something in my drink? Did she know outright, like, I saw this, but she was ignoring it? I don't think so. I would think more of like, it might have just been an accident. But I mean, I would probably just start bawling, honestly, in that moment. I'd just be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I would probably admit to her, like, oh my God, I saved all that up to kill you, you fucking cow. So, I don't know, but yeah, man, he could have lost it. One of the scariest parts in this movie to me is when she comes in the room when it's raining outside and she just pulls out the gun and she's like, I have this gun. And then she like leaves the room and she's like, I may go load it or something. I don't know what it is about that scene. It's just, he has to then lay there. Like, we don't get to see it because it cuts away and it moves to the next day. But like, you have to remember that guy sat there all night. I mean, of course he does this every night with this chick. She could do fucking anything. But this is the first time he's seen her with a gun. This is the first time he's ever seen her this fucking crazy. And she's just like, he has to lay there all goddamn night wondering this chick's gonna come in and just blow him away at any moment. The fear that this guy went through, holy shit. Another scene that makes me wonder something is the sheriff and him finding this phrase and him writing it down. And this is if he wrote down a ton of phrases or a ton of sentences throughout the books, it would make a little more sense. But he conveniently writes down one single phrase. So the only thing that I can come up with is that he's a sheriff, he's been there a long, long time, and he remembered that line but couldn't remember where he'd heard it. He's like, that's a familiar line. Why do I know that? And then once he saw Annie out there yelling and doing, he's like, wait a minute, I think I remember now. And he goes and he checks. That's the only thing I have to believe that's true. I haven't read the book, so it's possible that just outright says that in there. And but yeah, in here I feel like it's kind of just very convenient. But I think it does have a pretty easily explainable explanation. Then he sneaks out and he finds her newspaper clippings, she scrapbooks the murders that she's committed on children. Oh my God, this is that point where he's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here, like for real. This chick is killing kids. She's gonna have no qualms killing me. And just sitting there after when he says like no one thinks you're here, and then finding that newspaper clipping of Paul Sheldon like presumed dead or whatever, like thinking his daughter and his wife and everybody thinks he's dead, like that's something I can't even fathom. Like thinking that my family thinks I'm no longer around, wow, I think that would just crush me inside, thinking my kids, because who knows, I mean, how long was he gone? I think they might say in the movie, that's a long damn time for sure. Hopefully his wife hasn't moved on by the time he got back, because that would be fucked up. The hobbling scene, I think that this is an iconic scene that everybody knows. And although it is, I haven't read the book, I already stated that, but I know in the book that he gets his feet, like one of his feet, I think, just chopped off straight out by an axe by her, and like no one wanted to do the movie because that scene was too brutal, so they did this. And while of course I am always Mr. Gore and Mr. Blood and guts and all that kind of stuff, I actually think that this scene is more gruesome and more effective the way they shot it. So I almost find that ironic that they didn't want to do the leg chopping scene, because to me that would just be so quick and obvious and something we've seen a trillion times. I can't honestly tell you how many times I've seen a thing like this where she breaks his ankle sideways like that with him just sitting there, a board between, anything like that. I honestly don't think I could name many off the top, like even if I sat down and really thought about it. But like legs being chopped off, hands being chopped off, fuck. I could name fucking tons of them. So I don't know. This makes it way more, memorable. And I honestly thought it was more brutal. So I loved it. So yeah, good for them. But I do find it ironic. I have to. And another thing, like she lies. I love that her lie is that when the cop gets there and sees that she knows he's gonna find the typewriter, so she comes up something like super quick, like, I'm a big Paul Sheldon fan and I thought maybe I could be a spirit writer. I think it's pretty obvious that more than likely that she wanted the book for herself only. But I think it's kind of fun to think, like, did she have any intention of like trying to get this published or sending it in or anything? Like, because yes, she thinks of Misery almost as like her best friend and something that belongs to her because she's so self-absorbed. But she also loves Misery's existence in the world. and having it published would make it even more so a thing. So like sending it in, maybe like with a love letter, and like she shoots herself, and then like, oh my God, do you know how many copies that fucking book would sell if Paul Sheldon had written a book like that and it was like a popular series and they got like Misery's Return, and then you had that story behind it of like he was forced to do it and whatever. Oh my God, I'm sorry, people are fucked up, and they would definitely read the fuck out of it. That book would sell like crazy. A lot of people would get their ethics questioned, of course. But I have to wonder, yeah, would that get sold? Would they do it? Yeah, probably. Once the cop is dead, you know it's over. Like, I think it's over for him the minute he kills Misery. Like, his life ends, you know, in tangent with her. But yeah, once the cop's dead, it's over. Like, he just knows it's a ticking time bomb. And he's so smart on how he plays her in that scene. Like, he just knows the perfect things to say. He's a writer. He's good with words. And he knows, like, her trigger points. And he knows where she feels, you know, loved or liked, or, you know, he relates to her or whatever. Like, he has kind of figured those things out and pieced them together throughout the movie. There's moments where she's like, oh, Paul. And he knows those kinds of things. And then he knows the things that blow her up. So he really, like, specifically goes for those points there. And I love how he plays that. And also another question here is, like, how could he write this amazing last chapter of it under the pressure of this cop being shot in front of him and all this stuff? He might have, but he might not have. So I am curious on the shit that he's holding in his hand and that he has all, like, ready to light on fire and whatnot. Is there actually anything in there? Is that, like, I'm sure he wrote a bunch of words on it so it looks legit, but does it have all the information that he tells her that it has? Is it, you know, have these big reveals that he promises her? Did he actually, like, sit there and write it out? I almost have to believe he did, because what if she would have, like, came in the room and grabbed it and started reading it, like, you're not fucking with me, are you? Not that she would say that, but, you know, messing with me or whatever. Yeah, it just makes me wonder. So anyway, and oh my God, the PTSD he suffers after this, and I like that it kind of spins it in a different direction than most films would, and he actually, like, outright says, like, in a weird way, she kind of helped me. Like, I don't think a lot of people would want to admit that, and I don't think many films ever go that way. Like, you know, honestly, as fucked up as it was, like, I have to say, she kind of helped me out. Like, I love that the movie kind of ends like that, and it also ends with him seeing in Annie and I'm Your Number One Fan, which I'm sure many big celebrities and writers and actors and hear that shit all the time. So anytime he hears that from that point on, it's just gonna be like, you know, trigger, and he's gonna be like, oh my God, Annie. But anyway, I've been speaking for almost 30 fucking straight minutes, and I think, like, maybe 1 or 2 people are left by now. Yeah. Pick this up if you haven't. It's at Walmart right now for $12.88. What a steal. It has the slipcover and everything. So awesome transfer, and I definitely recommend it. Anyways, all right, guys.